In May 2026, during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Oslo, a junior journalist from the newspaper Dagsavisen asked an uncomfortable question about press freedom and human rights.
Prime Minister Modi, why don't you take some questions from the freest press in the world?
Modi left without answering, which was his prerogative. What followed was not. India's External Affairs Ministry Secretary West, Sibi George, a senior career diplomat, proceeded to deliver a sharp, emotionally charged public rebuttal, condemning God-forsaken ignorant NGOs, defending India's democratic record, and engaging the journalist in what can only be described as a political scrimmage at a diplomatic venue. The instinct to defend India is understandable. The execution was a professional failure. But the deeper problem is not temperament. It is a category error, a fundamental confusion about what the foreign ministry is and what it is not. The wrong institution defending the wrong thing. The Ministry of External Affairs exists to manage India's relationships with foreign states. Sibi George was in Oslo to manage the diplomatic texture of a bilateral visit. The joint statements, the strategic positioning, the signals sent to Norway's government and its European partners. That is a serious, consequential job. A junior journalist asking an unsolicited question at a press briefing is not a diplomatic incident. It is routine friction in any open society, especially Norway, which ranks first globally on press freedom indices. No Norwegian official sent a démarche. No bilateral protocol was violated. No state interest was threatened. A reporter did what reporters do. The MEA is not the Prime Minister's public relations agency. It is not the government's communications war room. Its mandate does not extend to managing the domestic optics of the PM's media avoidance. By treating a journalist's question as a provocation requiring official rebuttal, it committed a category substitution, converting a non-diplomatic event into a diplomatic statement, and in doing so, created the very incident it sought to contain. The escalation was self-inflicted. What the older IFS understood. This is where structural comparison becomes necessary, not to romanticize the past, but to identify what has changed and why it matters. The Indian Foreign Service that emerged from independence was shaped by a specific institutional culture. It was elite in the genuinely intellectual sense. Officers were expected to be area specialists, linguists, and strategic thinkers whose value lay precisely in their ability to navigate complexity without generating noise. The Nehruvian IFS prized what might be called cultivated ambiguity, the capacity to say very little while communicating precisely, to deflect without appearing to deflect, to preserve maneuverability above all else. This was not merely style, it was doctrine. Diplomats like T.N. Kaul, K.P.S. Menon, and later figures such as J.N. Dixit understood that their function was to keep channels open, to absorb friction quietly, and to never let the machinery of the foreign ministry become the story itself. Even in moments of genuine bilateral tension with Pakistan, China, the United States during the Cold War, the IFS default was to insulate state-to-state relations from media and public emotion. The institutional logic was clear. Diplomats serve the state, not the government of the day, and certainly not the political image of an individual leader. That distinction, subtle but foundational, is what appears to have collapsed in Oslo. The structural transformation. The shift did not happen overnight, and it is not simply a function of individual character. It is structural. Three forces have converged to reshape what the IFS is expected to do. The first is the centralization of foreign policy decision-making. Under successive governments, but accelerating sharply in the past decade, strategic authority has concentrated in the PMO. The MEA increasingly functions as an implementing agency rather than an independent policy institution. When foreign policy is an extension of the Prime Minister's personal brand, the foreign ministry's role subtly shifts from statecraft to brand management. The second is the velocity of social media. Before the smartphone era, an awkward question at a foreign venue disappeared into a niche newspaper column the following morning. Today, a 20-second clip becomes domestic political theatre within the hour. Diplomats are no longer communicating solely with host governments and foreign policy elites. They are communicating simultaneously to domestic partisan audiences, diaspora communities, and algorithmic outrage cycles. In this environment, silence is itself read as capitulation. The pressure to respond visibly, aggressively, immediately is real and structural, not merely temperamental. The third is the political elevation of the diplomat as public communicator. The careers of Subramanyam Jaishankar and Hardeep Singh Puri represent something genuinely new. The diplomat as political actor, operating at the front of ideological contest rather than behind the quiet machinery of state. This is not a criticism of their individual intellect. Both are formidable. It is an observation that their public model has reshaped the aspirational image within the service. When the most visible IFS alumni are combative public intellectuals, the institutional culture adapts accordingly. What was actually lost in Oslo? Set aside the optics. Consider the practical damage. By engaging the journalist, Sibi George transformed her question, which would have faded by the following news cycle, into a globally circulated diplomatic incident. He ensured that the story was no longer Modi's media avoidance, but India's official response to criticism. He handed opposition politicians a clean clip. He confirmed for European observers already watching India's democratic indicators with concern a narrative of official defensiveness. And he achieved nothing diplomatically. Norway's government position on India was unaffected. No bilateral agreement was altered. No strategic interest was advanced. This is the clearest measure of the error. The response cost more than silence would have and delivered nothing. The deeper question. What Oslo reveals is not that one diplomat lost his composure. It is that the institutional grammar of the IFS, the internalized understanding of what the foreign ministry is for and what it is not for, has quietly eroded under the combined pressure of political centralization, social media velocity, and the normalization of diplomatic aggression as a form of nationalist performance. The IFS was built to be India's most insulated professional service, the one domain where rigor, specialization, and institutional independence were protected from domestic political turbulence. That insulation was not a privilege. It was a functional requirement of effective diplomacy. When a senior diplomat harangues a junior journalist at a bilateral press briefing, the question is not whether he was right or wrong about India's democracy. The question is whether he understood his job. The evidence from Oslo suggests he did not. More troublingly, the system around him may no longer expect him to.
देश दुनिया की रखी खबर
हर रोज हर शाम
कानो कान
सुनते रहें द लेंस पॉडकास्ट।
रहे अपडेट लेंस के साथ।